faithful to the original. Royalty and advance. Okay, royalty and advance takes some time to explain because normally royalty and advance, if you're publishing a book without translation, if you're publishing a normal book, in the English industry at least, you get a royalty of about 12 to 15% of the sales. So if the book is selling for 200 rupees, your royalty of that is about between 12 to 15% of that, so between 24 to 30 rupees. Now, what most publishers do is that they say that, okay, I will divide that royalty between the author and the translator. So that 15%, for example, becomes 7.5, or it becomes 10 and 5, or it becomes 8 and whatever. So that is how royalty is calculated. So it is divided between the author and the translator. In many European countries, I have realized that translators don't get anything. They just get a fee for translation. They don't get royalty. But in India, it is accepted practice to demand and receive royalty in advance.
What is the translator's fee per word?
Sahitya Academy pays 1 rupee per word. So that is pretty much the standard. But again,
I don't think 1 rupee is less than 25% cost. Whether maybe they have increased.
Yeah, I think they have increased because NPT is saying that because Sahitya Academy is giving 1 rupee, we are giving 75 paisa or something like that. But yeah. But again, that is not set in stone. It is how much the publisher, at the end of it, is the publisher who decides how much he'll give you. It's not set in stone. And again, it has to be a commission work for that. You can't say, I have already translated and I want 1 rupee per word. So, yeah.
Leonard, just a point, I think picking up of publishing models from the West don't naturally fit in very well to the situation in Goa, given what it is here. Considering that you have a very fledgling publishing sector here, which is very disorganized, unorganized. The market is tiny, which I always say, and people like Jose always challenge me on it. Just because a book is in English doesn't mean to say it's going to be widely read. We English publishers are facing the same problem that you all are facing. When you're talking, about these royalties, publishing contracts, it comes with a certain model, a certain mindset. That is your big publishing house, which will, accept one book in hundreds. Now, if we want to widen the publishing net for a small society like Goa, then my argument is we need different publishing models.
No, but my contention to that with translation, talking about translation, why are you limiting a Goan book that is already written for a Goan audience to another Goan audience? Because if you're talking about a Konkani book, then why should that Konkani translation be limited to Goa?
No, I'm saying that every publishing model comes with its own logic. So if we go to Sahitya Academy, it has its own logic. Absolutely. If we go to OUP, it has its own logic, the high rejections, okay? So, Sahitya Academy officialdom and the fact of who gets chosen. So all these problems are there. So there are different models, there are a range of models, each one has its own limitation.
I think a smart publisher will modify, will adapt as things proceed. Because what I'm telling you is not what we have done. For example, we have not divided up the author's royalty between author and translator. The author has got his royalty and the translator has got her royalty.
Royalty sounds like a good word. I've published nationally as an author for Sage. And we get something like 9,000 a year, 2,000 a year, 400 a year. So, royalty sounds like fantastic, wow. But be careful of what different models hold.
But royalty also makes sure that the author is vested in his work. Because otherwise if it is a give and finish, then the author has no, meaning the author doesn't care if the book is selling or not selling.
It's a continuing relationship.
It's a continuous relationship. Royalty ensures that.
Other editions.
True.
I absolutely agree with you. The monetary benefit is not much.
Yeah, I'm not arguing against royalty, and I'm not saying that the author's work should not be recognized. All that I'm saying is that there is a catch somewhere. There is a catch everywhere.
So what's the catch?
With a big publisher, there's one.
Publishers' profits will reduce.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying with a big publisher, there is one catch. One in 100 books will get published. With a small publisher, your returns and visibility are going to be low, but your publishing chances are higher. So there's a trade-off.
No, that is the chance of publishing. He's talking about once you publish, how
True.
are you going to be paid?
Even publishing rates vary. Like for example, Kannada, a language like Kannada, on the net they quote 60 paise a word. for a language like Spanish, which we are trying to
No, no, but
do. It's 5 rupees a word.
But again, Frederick, these are not set in stone.
It's not set in stone.
Like for example, somebody can say I'm a very good translator and I demand 1 rupee per word or 1 rupee 25 per word.
Spanish is 5 rupees a word because there is a market problem there. There's a demand and supply problem.
But not all people who can translate from Spanish to English will get 5 rupees a word.
True.
So I think it also is a reflection of how much you worked in that field and how much you are, what is your company.
If I can just ask a couple of questions. What is the scene? We've been focusing on fiction. What about non-fiction? You know, what's the scene of translating?
I'll just finish this
Yeah.
before I get back to your question. Because there's just one more point about the authors, is that the author is prevented from authorizing another translation. That's very important because I cannot now go and publish another translation of, I don't know what contract you have signed for Tsunami Simon, but I cannot publish Tsunami Simon again because they are viewed as competing translations, of course. But even if it's by a different translator, you cannot have the translation of the same book. Okay? So quickly I'll go through the things that the translator signs. First is the permission to translate. The translator needs to have permission to translate, or at least verbal, or at least written permission, saying that okay, go ahead with this. Then the issues of plagiarism that I mentioned, advance royalty for many aspects. Okay, it's just not for print, also for reproduction of part on radio, TV, newspaper, magazine. Now, Government of India has made that any braille has to be done free of cost. So that's the only place where you do not get a royalty, but in all other cases you do. Then also reversion of rights. You can say that give my book back if you're not reprinting it. I remember Mr. Mauda having problems with reprints, and depending on what agreement you have signed, you can ask the publisher to get your rights back if you're not going to reprint the book. This nobody knows because suddenly the publisher decides, okay, I will not print any more copies, and the author has to go with it. But if you're signing a contract, you need to have that clause in your contract saying that if you're not going to reprint, I need to have my rights back.
So can a year, some time period?
Yeah, a time period is
10 years or
no. Like 12 to 18 months.
months?
Yeah, 12 to 18 months if you're not. So that could be any kind of reprint. Even if it's a pot, nonetheless it has to be there in the market. So, or the publisher might justify why he's not reprinting, but then you can have your rights back. And then of course corrections before reprinting and things like that. And time-based transactions, in the sense that the translation should be completed within a fixed period of time. This is when you're commissioning a translation. You cannot go on and saying you're translating. And going back to your question that why has non-fiction not been translated as much as fiction?
I think more non-fiction books are made available than, of course, translation, not in translation, in the original.
What I'm also thinking is maybe because it's very regional in that sense and does not have a wider appeal. I don't know. Maybe that's the reason.
Those who want to promote Konkani actually need to have lots more translators into the Konkani language of non-fiction works, of works which would be read by school children. Okay, I don't know whether that would be feasible afterwards at the college level, because there simply isn't. But if they are interested in it, that's where they should go. If at all, I notice, I'm not very sure, perhaps Bhai or others would help me here. I'm not sure if there are that many non-fiction and books, related to the subject knowledge of students being published as much as literary translations are being done. I mean, that also is required, but people now are capable of reading those words already in English, in Hindi, Marathi. So the need for it may not be so much.
In my childhood, we were 5 siblings. Our father was a teacher. He brought home one day a whole set of books, classics in easy English. They were small books and to be read from say 5th standard to 10th standard. That English quality, adapted, abridged classics in easy English. From that set of books, I read all the great classics of English: Three Musketeers, Tale of Two Cities, Oliver Twist, and name it, every classic, what we used to call classic at the time, I read. I have never read the original unadapted or unabridged classic, which would probably be a fat book with much more stronger, classical English language. I should. But some, maybe one or two I have read. But by and large, my knowledge of the characters and the lessons that those classics had to teach came from those little books. And by the time we grew up, those books were tattered and torn and finished. Because 5 of us had read them hundreds of times again and again. Do we have this in Konkani is one question that I would like to ask. Do we have enough novels or novellas which we can adapt to easy language and give to the 5th standard child or growing teenager or young adult, where he can grasp? Not yet, because for example, you would not take Carmelian and turn it into an easy English book and give to the 5th standard child, because it needs maturity to understand what is being explored there. Or Kaliganga, or Achev. They are complex novels, they are for the adult mind. But at some point in time, we have produced enough literature which can not only be published in easy Konkani for the child and the teenager, it should also be translated into easy English for the child and teenager in other states, other parts of India and wherever else, because that's our literature going to those people. So there's a lot of work to be done in that sense.
Whatever you say is absolutely true, but then first you have to decide whether you're going to do it in Devanagari, in Roman script, or in Kannada. Then you have to decide whether it's going to be Andruji, in Sanskrit language, in Bardesi, or Fedling dialects, and so on and so on. So by the time you finish that, there will be no book published.
Just a point I'd like to add to what Jose was saying. He has read most of the classics in abridged form. I have picked up most of my extensive knowledge, I would say, of the Second World War, especially through those war comics published by 3P publication. Because they're very, very accurate, very authentic, and very easy to grasp. In fact, I remember once I was going about with an elderly gentleman. I was quite young, just finished my SSC, I think. And this gentleman used to work on the ship. He was some officer on the ship. So he said, yes, I was also in the war and I was in North Africa. So I said, Tobruk? He said, yes. And then as he kept talking, I started adding the name. He said, how do you know all this? You read a lot? I said, yes. What books? Comics? I said, and then his face fell. But I think perhaps we could, a lot of these books, novels, novellas and all, could easily go into comics so that more and more children could read and enjoy it.
So,
I just want to get one small.
yeah, okay.
There was something I wanted to say about the stories in this book, Mirage. I had read Robert Poole 4 or 5 years back, I think, because I am a great disciple of Bayes. I read a lot of his work. And I had to read it again in the English translation, Mirage. And that was a time when I was going through some kind of difficulties, in work and all that, and I was quite stressed out. And I was I would take up a job and say, no, I don't want this project because it's troubling me, I want some peace. And again I would take up something else and again I would push it away. So this story suddenly came very much alive for me in significance. In the sense that, where do you find peace? I read another book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. We always think that peace will be to go to the top of a mountain, the Himalayas, like a yogi, and meditate and find peace there. But in this book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, he is tuning the motorcycle engine and says you must be able to find peace and meditate as a Zen master even at the head of that motorcycle engine where the piston is, beating away at 1,000 rotations per minute, whatever it is. So even in the noise of life, you must be able to find peace. That is what this story meant to me. So I would strongly recommend that you all, spread these stories around to everybody.
Shall I add to what you said? By the way, translating into English has gone into fourth or fifth print. They never asked me for that, but they should go for the next print. But I'm happy that they continue. When it came to These Are My Children by Katha Publications, they stepped on it after finishing the first edition. So I was asked after them because I could see the people wanting to read the books and they were not coming out. So finally I told them, okay, you can return the rights to me. Can I get them published from somewhere else? Then suddenly they came out. But they had their own way. The book originally which cost 200 suddenly became 300 rupees. Anyway, that was another story. By the way, the present book, this Mirage, originally was written more than 50 years back. There is one of them is a science fiction, which Vidya Pai, who translated all the old stories first, she said, why I will not be able to translate the short science fiction. So then I went afterward. I said, no, you do the translation, I'll see whether it is satisfactory or not. So just she finished it and sent it. She was not happy with it. So sometimes I agree that translator should like the work that he's doing. Like I used to say, if he likes it, he will do it. Nobody has need to ask him to do it. But then here she was saying no, and I of course said she did it. And I don't think it is a bad translation. Of course, here is Jose who has gone through all the 5 stories in details as he worked as copy editor also and editor also.
Just a little bit about what efforts Leonard and Queenie has put into this book under the people tree. People tree, of course, is the tree of knowledge in our mythology and wisdom. That logo, small logo here in this corner, you can barely see, it shows many kinds of speech balloons of thinking, different colored patches of thinking and thought coming out from the tree. So it shows different cultures, different languages, all branching out from the same tree of human thought. Then at the back of it, it's also written e-book available, which means a soft copy version can be probably bought online. What's the price of that online copy? 99 rupees. Yeah. Yes. So this is again he's using new technology to go forward. The font he has used is also very nice. The font, the layout, the margin is very well designed. On the front page, he has very concentrically put a page where you can put your name. This is from the library of so and so. This after he buys the book, you can write your name here. Or when you gift it to someone, you can say, write the name of that person to whom you're gifting onto this page. That science fiction story is one of the rare science fiction stories written in Konkani at that time, many years ago. And when I was translating it, I found that most of his scientific concepts are very sound, well researched, and plausible. So it's not that he has just written off his head and made up things. I even went on to Google and I searched for information whether Bio was really giving the correct information about planets and moons and all that. So it is good and very well written. Then Mirage is Rumored Fool, which is original as Mirage is originally Kokne as Rumored Fool, is one of the longest stories I think that he has written, short stories. And it's about a philosophical search of a man looking for peace and quietness in his life. I don't know if it's autobiographical, he was too young to be searching for peace at that time. Then Illusion is again a story set in the Middle East. There are many stories that Bhai has written, the Red, Nissan, I think, and Carmelin, of course. At least 4-5 stories which are written in the Middle East, and all of them also very well researched. You feel actually that you are traveling through Kuwait or Dubai or Abu Dhabi when you are reading those books. New Case is also a very sensitive story. Navi Case. It's a set in a mental asylum. A young nurse who is going through her own existential crisis and frustrations, what she is facing and what happens to her. And Cry Now is one of the most powerful stories in this. It's again about what happens now, Bone Village, where alcoholism, how you bring up a child, what happens to the child, how there's a culture clash with generations, and how the simple relationship between parents and a son, the love that can completely get reversed shockingly, and what comes of it. I will not tell you what the stories are, but every one of these 5 stories is delightful, educative, and has a lesson, kind of a lesson, a philosophical or moral lesson. And this book is, I think, one of the finest gifts you can give someone. I gave it to my wife, or rather she took it from me. She kept it in her corner of the bed, and she finished it off. And then my daughter and wife were fighting for the book. So it's that kind of a book. Very light, very easy to read, and makes for a very good gift. So hats off to Leonard. And I think if we have any translated works in mind in the future, we should approach Leonard. I have one set. I have translated Charagaba, Mujibak, Nageli, Anam Ambar story, and many fancy stories as well. I am going to complete around 20 stories and request Leonard to publish it. So I think we should support Under the People Tree and let it flourish. Let our Kokri go out to the world at large. Thank you.
I just, thanks, I just wanted to set the records without taking anything back from what I had said in another interview, which was there on video. So, when I first looked at the book, I was a little annoyed, to tell you frankly. As a reader, you should be very careful when, the writer should be very careful when writing out A, the title, B, the first sentence of the story, the first page. It's like you start your motorcycle starts well, then you start riding and you just go on, hopefully. The petrol is there, you just go on and on and on until you reach your destination. So, I looked at some of the sentences there, the early sentences of all these books there, not much time, just at the time when it was the first release at the Goa Arts and Literary Festival. And I expressed my annoyance with the way the literary Konkani was translated to English. Now I'd like to say one thing. If at all you hear that interview, somewhere, don't take me to total face value there. Partly I do these things to provoke people, thinking about what they're doing. But I'd like to say this, if you keep reading the story, then after that you forget this issue about style. That is something which a translator himself will go and say, I would have done it like that, and we should have done that, and things like this. But I really do feel that the stories which are here are ones which, once you start reading, once you get hooked on it, and they are very, very enjoyable to read, all of them. Yeah, thanks.
On that note, we'll conclude. I would like to thank my fellow panelists for a very engaging discussion, and I hope that all of you who have spent your evening here have enjoyed it as much. Thank you very much for coming. I would also like to thank the District Library for allowing us to have it here. Mr. Mohandas couldn't be with us, but he's been very supportive of all our initiatives here, and I want to thank him for that. We are going to have, if you want a copy signed, we are going to have Mr. Margao sent some copies. And there are other books by Mr. Margao and other books about Goa also available, so please feel free to look through them. Thank you.